Oathbreaker is broken. If you are not familiar with the format, I have a detailed guide to playing Oathbreaker here, as well as several deck techs, including Tamio's Sliverfield Research and Arlen Cord's Howling Good Time of Werewolves, but the short of it is this. In Oathbreaker, you essentially get to choose a Planeswalker as your commander, as well as an instant or sorcery spell that goes in the command zone with your commander. The flavor here is off the charts. You cast your Planeswalker commander, and once in play, you can cast their signature spell. Just like the commander, the spell is repeatable. You cast it, and then it returns to the command zone, and you can cast it again by paying a tax. So why is this broken? Well, if you've spent any time on any Magic the Gathering online discussion group, you know why. It's just too easy to exploit. My Oathbreaker is Narset, Parter of Veils, and my signature spell is Windfall. Yeah, broken. You don't even have to get that nuts, and it's still broken. My Oathbreaker is Ugin, and the signature spell is All Is Dust. Bye-bye. Broken. Bye-bye. How about any black mana Oathbreaker and the Elder spell? Elder broken. Come on, it's broken. You know it's broken. But here's the thing. So's Commander. Commander is a format that is inherently broken, and it only works because we all pretend that it works. When you sit down to shuffle up and play with your friends, you've chosen to omit so many Magic the Gathering cards from your Commander deck, not because they cost too much, but because they break the game, and then, if the game is broken, you can't play. And also because they cost too much. So just because Oathbreaker is broken, it doesn't mean it isn't extremely fun to play, doesn't mean it still isn't one of the best, if not the best, Commander variants that there is, and if you and your friends aren't going to run just the most broken signature spell and Planeswalker combinations that you can't you just instead build a clever and intelligent Oathbreaker deck that's still powerful, but lets you actually play the game instead of just auto-winning? Well, I have a challenge for you. In this video, we worked really hard to research 5 powerful but not broken Planeswalker and signature spell combinations for Oathbreaker, and I want you to tell me, broken or not broken? I'll explain the deck's premise, how it works, and you tell me if they are still inherently broken or maybe, just maybe, a lot of fun to play. Let's dive right in, shall we? But first, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Incogni. You know, all too often when online, you are the product. You sign up for a free game or a supermarket rewards account, and your information gets passed around and sold to lots of different data brokers online. Strange phone calls and spam start arriving. Hello? Who's this? Go away! That's why I'm so happy to be using today's sponsor, Incogni. You know, you actually have the legal right to remove yourself from these data broker lists, but the process is arduous. First, you need to find them, then you need to follow a specific legal process to get your information removed, and then follow up to see if they actually followed through. It can take years just to get all your data removed, but Incogni does all that for you. Go to incogni.com/Tolarian Community and use code Tolarian Community, and Incogni will find out who has your data and start getting your... Is it data or data? They're gonna get it off the market right away. They do it for you. You know, I signed up for Incogni and just expected to get removed from those basic sort of spam messages. And while I did, what surprised me was things like, I have college degrees. And when you have college degrees, they often sell your information to things like recruiting agencies and other weird characters. I didn't even realize that's where those emails were coming from. Incogni was able to contact them and tell them to stop sending me this spam right away. It was great. And all of those generic mailing lists, Incogni was able to get me off of them en masse. And what's great is since you are constantly getting re-signed up for this stuff without you having asked, Incogni is going to unsign you up for it. My inbox is so less cluttered with spam now. It's great, and I feel better knowing my data is getting off of these lists. Protect your privacy today. Go to incogni.com/Tolarian Community and use code Tolarian Community to take your personal information off the market. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring this video. Starting our list in creepy crawly fashion is the decrepit lord of the insect herself, Grist, the Hunger Tide. Grist is a 3-loyalty planeswalker that costs 1 colorless, 1 black, and 1 green mana. Grist states as long as Grist, the Hunger Tide isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. Her +1 ability states, create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token, then mill a card. If an insect card was milled this way, put a loyalty counter on Grist and repeat this process. -2 states, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker. And -5, each opponent loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Grist's signature spell is Rites of Spring, a sorcery that costs 1 colorless and 1 green mana and states, discard any number of cards. Search your library for up to that many basic land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. The goal of this combination is ultimately to infest our board with a horde of insects. To this end, our deck will be filled to the brim with all our favorite insect creature cards. The turn we cast Grist, let's immediately improve her survivability by activating +1, creating an insect token to block, milling a card, and ideally repeating the process at least once by revealing one of our many insects. On our next turn, let's immediately cast Rites of Spring, discarding our entire hand of what ought to be at least 6 cards, grabbing 6 basic lands from our deck. The profit of this is twofold. Not only is this an opportunity to discard creatures, empowering Grist's -5 ability, but by removing 6 non-insects from the deck, we've also considerably increased our chance to reveal one when we use her +1. With the odds now higher in our favor, let's activate that +1, create another blocker, and with a little luck, repeat the process, creating more insect tokens and filling our graveyard with even more insect cards. With commander tax, Rites of Spring still costs only 4 mana, so let's cast it again as soon as possible. When resolved, we'll have removed a total of 12 to 14 basic lands from our deck, sending our chance to mill multiple insects soaring. With our graveyard and battlefield now active hives, and Grist accumulating significant loyalty, we may annihilate our opponent with 2 methods. -5 can bring 20 life down to 0 after just a couple activations, as between our discards with Rites of Spring, our milling with Grist, plus cards like Grisly Salvage, we're certain to have enough creatures in the yard to make them lose a third or even half of their starting life total. Our second method is to barrage and sting our opponents in the combat step, especially after we cast Patriarch's Bidding, naming insects, and bringing every horrible multiplying death-touching bug back into play. So what do you think? Broken or not broken? For our next Oathbreaker spell combination, we're leaving these horrible infested crypts behind. Let us head somewhere more civilized and find solace with a combination that is decidedly more righteous, disciplined, and even holy? Our number 4 Oathbreaker is Gideon of the Trials, a 3-loyalty planeswalker that costs 1 generic and 2 white mana. Gideon's +1 states, until your next turn, prevent all damage target permanent would deal. His +0 until end of turn, Gideon of the Trials becomes a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. And his second +0, you get an emblem with, as long as you control a Gideon planeswalker, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. As if Gideon's abilities didn't make him a big enough pain for our opponents to deal with, Holy Day is his signature spell, an instant that costs 1 white and simply states, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. The goal of this combination is to be a continuously unappealing, if not impossible target for our opponents to send their threats and spells at. Over the course of the game, we'll use this intangibility to slowly amount a win condition that our opponents can do nothing to prevent. The turn we cast Gideon, let's pick one of 2 loyalty abilities. Should there be a threat on the board that would immediately harm him, let's utilize our +1 to neutralize it, preventing all damage it would deal. If we are feeling more confident about Gideon's safety, let's quickly activate his second +0, attaining an astonishing emblem that prevents us from losing the game, and our opponents from winning the game as long as we control a Gideon planeswalker. Oh, and we're totally going to be running redundant Gideons in this deck, by the way. So many Gideons! The turn after we cast Gideon is when we start using the other +0, turning him into a 4/4 indestructible attacker that prevents all damage to him. The damage prevention is extremely welcome too, as it helps us save signature spell Holy Day for strictly defensive purposes. With our shield stalwart, interaction in hand, and an emblem preventing our opponents from winning, let's close this game out in one of two ways. Sarah's Emissary is as reliable as ever, as choosing to gain protection from creatures with her enter ability effectively makes all of our attackers unblockable, and gives us immunity to opposing attacks. If combat isn't your style, our impenetrable defenses means an approach of the Second Sun victory is surely too on the horizon. While Gideon and Holy Day act as a bulwark of durability, this next combination cares not for playing defense in such a manner. Prepare to learn the true meaning of Glass Cannon in Oathbreaker. Coming in at number 3 is none other than the dynamic duo themselves, Minsk and Boo, Tireless Heroes. Minsk and Boo, Tireless Heroes is a 3 loyalty planeswalker that costs 2 generic, 1 red, and 1 green mana to cast. They state, when Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes enters the battlefield, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create Boo, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. For +1, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature with trample or haste, and at -2 loyalty, sacrifice a creature. When you do, Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes, deals X damage to any target, where X is that creature's power. If the sacrificed creature was a hamster, draw X cards. Our -2 highly incentivizes us to increase the power of Boo, and wow, is that exactly what we are going to do. Our signature spell is Invigorate, an instant that costs 2 generic and 1 green mana. It states if you control a forest, rather than pay this spell's mana cost, you may have an opponent gain 3 life. Target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. The power of a free spell in the command zone cannot be understated, and trust me when I say letting an opponent gain 3 life is a very low cost to pay in the grand scheme of things. The ultimate goal of this combination is to create the biggest, deadliest hamster in history. To truly display the raw power of this Oathbreaker combination, let me present this scenario. On turn 2, we have a forest and a mountain. We cast Arcane Signet, then tap it to cast Birds of Paradise. Turn 3 begins. Let's play a forest and cast Minsk and Boo, creating a Boo token with trample and haste upon entering. Before combat, let's tap our Birds of Paradise to cast Might of Old Krosa, which, thanks to doing so on our main phase, gives Boo +4/+4. Then let's head to combat and swing with our hamster at a threat of our choosing. Before damage is calculated, let's cast Invigorate for free, having the least threatening opponent gain 3 life, making Boo a 9/9. Finally, we'll pay 2 life to cast Mutagenic Growth, making Boo an 11/11. If you aren't laughing maniacally enough yet, then you aren't paying attention. Because as we move to post-combat, where we can activate Minsk as -2, we then sacrifice this Colossus hamster, dealing 11 damage to any target, and then drawing 11 cards. If Boo successfully dealt all 11 combat damage to a player, we now have the option to remove that player from the game entirely. Geez, kid, be careful with that hamster, you'll shoot someone's eye out. For our next Oathbreaker combo, I wanted to include a mechanic and playstyle that wildly differentiates from the others on this list. What mechanic is that, I wonder? Ooh, boy, it's getting a little stormy outside. Coming in at number 3 is none other than the dynamic duo themselves, Minsk and... No, I just did that one. Ha ha ha. Fooled you. The number 2 Oathbreaker on our list is Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, a 4 loyalty planeswalker that costs 1 generic and 3 blue mana. Jace states, if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. His +1 states, target player mills 2 cards, draw a card, and his -8, draw 7 cards. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. Wow, if reading the card didn't explain the card for some reason, let me summarize this Jace for you. Mill cards, win game, the end. And in order to mill those cards, we're going to use Jace's signature spell, Brain Freeze, an instant that costs 1 generic and 1 blue mana, and reads, target player mills 3 cards. Storm, which means when you cast this spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies. Ah, Storm, our favorite design mistake. Let's indulge, shall we? The goal of this combination is to use Jace's static ability to win the game by brain freezing our entire deck to the graveyard. In order to storm enough copies of Brain Freeze to do so, we're going to need a plethora of cantrips, free spells, and cheap interaction in our deck. Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, Mox Amber, and Mox Diamond is our Sweet Day Resistance of stellar storm-inducing mana rocks. Did you proxy the card? Proxying the card means you get to actually play with the card. Thought Scour, Consider, Ponder, and even more will bring our cantrip collection to the quantity required. And control spells Chain of Vapor, Vapor Snag, and Swan Song can stabilize and storm all at once. Most of the deck will have extremely low mana costs like these. We want storm count to reach 10 to 15 every time we cast Brain Freeze, milling ideally the remaining 30 to 45 cards left in our deck. And with no library remaining, Jace's +1 will cause us to draw a card, immediately winning the game. Alright, so when it came to the number one spot on this list, I wanted to look for something that was truly out there. I wanted something that really represented the wonderful, eclectic, vibrant range of decks that one can construct in this format. So what better Oathbreaker to pick than one that hasn't even been released yet? It's never too early to start brewing or writing your own story. Am I right, Commodore Guff? To be released later this year with the Commander Masters pre-constructed decks, our number one Oathbreaker is Commodore Guff. While Guff may be the newest planeswalker on the block, he's kicking it old school by throwing it all the way back to Mercadian Masks with signature spell Sizzle. First, let's take a look at Guff himself, a 5 loyalty planeswalker that costs 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 white mana. He states, at the beginning of your end step, put a loyalty counter on another target planeswalker you control. +1, create a 1/1 red wizard creature token with tap, add 1 red mana, spend this mana only to cast a planeswalker spell, and -3, you draw X cards, and Commodore Guff deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. Oh my god, wizards, you keep doing Super Friends cards! Commodore's static, +1 and -3 ability spells out a very clear mission for us. Cast planeswalkers and burn face. And what better signature spell to enhance our face-burning capabilities than Sizzle, a sorcery that costs 2 generic and 1 red mana, and simply states, Sizzle deals 3 damage to each opponent. The goal of this combination is to create an exciting, intentionally bizarre twist on Super Friend decks, as well as burn decks. This is why we've included our primary sub-theme, Oops, All Chandras, to fully utilize Commodore Guff's red mana dorks, and make his -3 damage more effective. So this deck is absolutely packed to the brim with Chandra planeswalkers. It's got Chandra Torch of Defiance, but wait, that's not all. It's got Chandra Pyro Genius, and also it's got Chandra Flames Catalyst, not to mention Chandra Awakened Inferno, and all these Chandras are, like Sizzle and Guff, capable of dealing direct damage to each opponent, making them auto-includes. And while Chandra Acolyte of Flame, Chandra Dress to Kill, and Chandra Fire Artisan don't deal as much damage, their low mana value and solid utility make them the next best options for our Firebrand foray. Should Commodore Guff, Sizzle, and our Chandelier of Chandras be insufficient in closing the game, let's also pack a copy of Dragon's Approach, as well as a Flame Rift, which can deal 7 more damage to each opponent, securing our triumph. Behold, Jeskai Chandra Super Friend Faceburn. Let's go Oathbreaker. Anything is possible, and don't let them tell you otherwise. So now you tell me, is that all broken? Do you really need to sit down with, Narset and Windfall, Jason, whatever? Yeah, we get it. It's broken if you use those combos, but there are other combos to use, and you can still play and have fun. And you know what? You can still Narset Windfall in Commander, but you don't do it, because you're not evil. But now I want to hear from you. Beyond just saying whether or not what we talked about today is broken or not broken, what do you think of the Oathbreaker format? Have you given it a go? And if so, how much did you like it? Let me know in the comments below. Hey, thanks once again to Incogni for sponsoring this video. If you want to get your personal information off of the internet, get your name off of all of these spam lists, then Incogni is something you should check out. At the link below, we'll get 60% off of Incogni. Protect your privacy today. Go to incogni.com/Tolarian Community and use code Tolarian Community to take your personal data off the market. Thanks, Incogni, for sponsoring this video.
the season finale of Shuffle Up and Play.
Secret commanders. Each of my guests has brought a commander deck, but none of us know, and we will not know until we cast that commander during the game for the first time.
Legitimately looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh board. Like,
Yeah, we brought
face down, cards, side.
it's all very clean.
This'll Persecutor. This is a 6/6 flying trample. You can't win the game and your opponents can't lose the game. Sovereigns in the skies.
Sovereigns in the skies.
Now you got it.
Take my mic off. I think I need to get
Called
this.
Liar's Pendulum for 1 mana. I told you, I brought riddles.
It's absurd.
I feel like I'm trapped in an Escher painting.
In that case, feast your eyes on.
No.